reiterate question about what the employer contribution rate is and whether that stays static. So the employer contribution that's deducted through the practices is 14.38%, but then that's topped up centrally is the shorthand way of saying that it is then a higher percentage that's applied overall, but it is static. There's no thresholds to that, the same way as there are the different levels of salary that apply to the different tiers. There's some questions about the pensionable pay, whether it was the net pay or the gross pay. So it's the gross pay from your pay slip, and if you've worked all year, it would be from the month 12 pay slip that you would get that information. Someone has asked about what do they do if the tier rate has changed during the year, because so they've maybe had a salary increase during the year. So that's really the purpose of the Type 2 form brought to life. So depending on what, how quickly the practice have reacted or whatever, then the tier rates for part of the year, if they've resubmitted a revised estimate, then it may be that an increased tier rate has been applied, an increased pensionable pay amount has been applied for the latter part of the year. So it might be that when it comes to it, then your Type 2 form comes out where things have been paid appropriately. But the purpose of the Type 2 form is to get all of those pensionable pay amounts down for the different roles that a Type 2 GP has had, and then the contributions that have been paid for those individual roles. Look at what the tier rate needs to be for that total of pensionable pay for the full year. So the tier rate's applied to the total amount, and then the calculation that's done on the form is whether or not the amount of employee contributions that has been paid in total matches the tier rate percent, the calculation that is the tier rate percentage times your total pensionable pay. So that really does bring to life why the Type 2 form is there, because people's circumstances can change throughout the year. And as we've explained then a little bit ago, if the form then shows that there has been underpayment or overpayment of contributions for one or multiple of the roles, then the processes that I've explained earlier on there are followed to make sure that that's corrected. I think Janet's also answered the questions that are around what happens if I don't submit the Type 2 form. If I was a Type 2 GP, it is a requirement that you do so. But if a GP doesn't submit their Type 2 form, or the information is unclear and we're not able to fully reconcile it, then ultimately we can't update the pension record. So your pension record kind of stays static at the last point that we were able to update it. And I think the other questions was one kind of practical one around when I've downloaded the Excel form, do I save it to a PDF? You don't need to do that at all. In fact, it tends to present itself through to PCSE a lot clearer if you don't. So just save the Excel spreadsheet when you've finished it and upload it through the Contact Us form as Debbie has shown. And then the other thing really to point out is about the cut-off time for processing for PCSE. So as we said, the whole purpose of this is to get the reconciliation done so that PCSE can update your pensions record at the NHS pensions portal. If there are gaps in your record, then we need to also be able to resolve those gaps to be able to do that. But the deadline for submitting your 23-24 form is the 28th of February this year. But the processing window, I think normally we receive about 35,000 plus Type 1 and Type 2 forms for processing. So the processing window is right up until around about the middle of June, which is the cut-off that NHS Pensions gives to PCSE for data to meet the upload for the statement refresh in the summer. So what that means is that when you've submitted your Type 2 form, then it may be a number of months before you receive communication back. So as Debbie's pointed out, you'll receive that initial email that says, this is your case reference for your type 2 form, and that's what to use if you do need to contact us further about it. But if you have submitted your form by the deadline, then please be aware that it could be up to the middle of June before you receive confirmation back from PCSE that it's been processed, or any requests for any additional missing information. So just be conscious of that, and don't worry, don't panic if you don't receive a response. The volume of certificates, volume of type 1 and type 2 forms that need to be processed are such that, there's a schedule of processing that goes on right up until that June cut-off point. Okay, so we've got a question about a trainee. Good scenario to bring up. If you've been a trainee for part of the 23-24 year, then that trainee post in NHS pensions terms is treated the same as officer work, so that does not get declared on your type 2 form. So if you became a salaried GP, partway through the year, but in the earlier part you had been a trainee, then you don't include the trainee work. Any officer posts we mentioned at the start, but you don't declare.
So added years contract essentially is where GPs could buy additional pension. The added years contracts were closed in 2008. No one could join after that. But anyone that has a contract needs to continue paying it until they receive their pension. So that's what an added years contract is. So there's one here about if you've made an overpayment, will the provider be required to repay the payment back to yourself? Absolutely. If you contact your provider, let them know that there's been an overpayment. You can give them a copy of your type 2 form that will help them understand what that overpayment is, and they should return that to you quite quickly.
I think this is another one where it says, when using the annualisation calculator, how should we include solo work? With the type 2, what dates should we use?
So essentially with your solo work, it should be the first date on the solo form and the last date on the solo form. So for example, if you were in contract for the whole year, so from the 1st of April to the 31st of March, then in effect, you will have been in the scheme for the entire year, and therefore annualisation will not affect you. If you picked up that role at any given point during the year, then whatever that first date is, and that last date is, you put that into the calculator, and it will essentially mean that you will be in pension for that whole period, whether you worked 1 day, 10 days, or 50 days. And if you go into the BMA website and put in my name, there are some workarounds how to avoid annualisation. And one of the easiest ways to avoid annualisation is to essentially pick up a role, which is a solo role, do a session in April, and then close to 31st of March, the provider should be able to do the solo form for the whole year, and therefore can avoid you being annualised.
We've got one that says, my salary role and contributions show up on PCSE online, but not the pensions contributions from my other role at the university. How do I see these contributions? So that's a good example of the role at the university will have been pensioned as officer by that organisation. That means it's paid direct. It doesn't come through the practitioner scheme, so you won't see it on PCSE online, but you should be able to see it on your NHS pensions record. So PCSE Online, if you like, is an intermediary record which records all of the practitioner work. That then gets reconciled each year, as we've just spent a lot of time discussing. And once it's been reconciled, that practitioner record is updated on your NHS pensions record. But if you have officer roles, such as this university example, alongside practitioner roles, then the officer roles, because the pension is directly paid across by the provider, then you will see those roles on your NHS pensions record, but they won't appear on PCSE Online.
Can I just answer one on timelines?
Yep.
So essentially, what we're looking at here is the pension year ending 31st of March 2024. So you're doing your type 2 form to be submitted 11 months later by the 28th of February, and therefore your pension record will be updated, if all being correct, by August of this year. So in the chat, there's individuals talking about work from August 24. That will fall into the following year. Another
Thank you.
question is about signatures. On the type 2 form, you can just type your name and that will be sufficient. You don't need to do a written signature.
Just to add there, Krishan, as long as you sent that from your
Your
nhs.net
NHS,
email address. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
just
absolutely.
just to be clear. I know most people do, but not everybody does. So just to make
Yeah.
that clear.
So that
Um,
just to clarify that, so with an NHS email, it basically helps identify who you are, and therefore a hand wet, we call it a wet signature, a handwritten signature is not required. If you were to use Gmail, etc., then you will need to print off the form, sign it, and then load it up as a PDF.
Excellent. Got someone saying I'm salaried and locum. Can you confirm if we do not need to annualise the locum work if we're salaried for the whole year? So yes, we can confirm that. If you've got a continuous type 2 post for the whole year, then annualisation doesn't apply. So your locum work is added, your pensionable pay from your locum work is added to, part of your total pensionable pay to determine the tier rate, but you're not annualising in that scenario.
Well, you covered the one where obviously I've said the gross pay for your salary post, but there's a question on there about locum. Obviously, it's 90% of pensionable of income. So can you just cover that one, please?
Thanks, Janet. Yeah, so for your locum workers, Janet's responded there, then it's 90%. So you'll see on your locum A and B forms that clarifies that it's 90% of the locum income that is pensionable. So that's your pensionable pay for your locum work. And then as Janet said, it's the gross pay. I think the easiest way, Krishan, to describe that is that it's before any tax or any other deductions. It's that gross pay amount that's your pensionable pay for salaried roles where you've got a pay slip. But locum, it's 90% of the income is the pensionable pay amount.
If you have a salaried role and you're unsure, ask your practice manager or whoever may deal with the finance for that. As Katrina's mentioned, with locum, it's 90%, which is pensionable. If you have a solo form, whatever the value is on the solo form is your pensionable pay. There's one question here about locum work done where you've not added to the pension scheme. If you've done locum work and you've not claimed pension on it, then it's not pensionable pay and therefore would not go on the type 2 form as long as you've got a salaried or other role. But just for a moment, with my other hat as a BMA, it may be worthwhile for you to look at some of the BMA material that we've put out because we strongly recommend that you pension all income. But that's outside of today's conversation. But if you look on the BMA website, we've done some good, I think, good web pages that you may want to consider.
And I think just on that, it's good to get that advice in for going forwards. But for the 23-24 year, if we have a GP who didn't pension under the 10-week rule in that year, then as you've said, Krishan, that doesn't get included because it can't be pensioned now, can it? But going forwards, obviously people can change their mind and start pensioning their locum work when they wish to. So that's all good. We've got one which says my payslip amount is different to the employer statement online. Please, can you explain? Do I use my payslip figure? Okay, so I guess this is a really common scenario. So the employee contribution statement, I think you probably mean on PCSE Online, will show the amounts that have been deducted from the practice based on the practice estimate that they submitted. So at the start of the year, they might have submitted, as an example, we think this GP is going to earn £50,000 and the tier rate is going to be 9.8. That's probably wrong, but whatever the percentage is. And so the PCSE system automatically deducts from that practice's contractual payments every month 1/12 of what that's going to be for the full year. And that's what we've taken from the practice at the end of the year. Locally through payroll, then your true salary is paid every month. If you've had any adjustments to that during the year, etc., that's all reflected, and the tier rate is applied at whatever has been put through the payroll system, is the bottom line. So when you come to look at your month 12 pay slip, it's that figure that you're putting in, and NHS pensions have clarified, and that's why they've set out some separate columns this year, that the column that you populate the contributions already paid figure, that figure comes for your salaried roles, that figure comes from your payslip. If you've worked there all year, it'll be your month 12 payslip, and then that difference column is the difference amount you need to sort out with the practice. The end box, box 2C, as we pointed out earlier, it's not mandatory, but having that recorded might just be useful for you to see what position the practice has been, but it's going to be very common that that's a different amount than the contributions that you have paid. So don't worry if those figures are different, but it's the payslip amounts that you put into the column that says contributions already paid.
There's a few questions here about how to get a statement. So as I mentioned, PCSE look at your data 11 months after year end and update their portal. They will then send that to NHS Pensions. So your record will essentially be in two time points, one where PCSE updated it and one when NHS Pensions. The NHS total rewards no longer exist for GPs, and the My Pension portal does not work. I don't want to take away from PCSE's webinar, but if you go to the BMA website, there is a GP pension campaign, and that can talk you through steps where we have written letters to help you advise how to get your statement, and then you can contact PCSE to help update that. But you can look at your PCSE website to get your statement, and then there's the NHS Pensions, which is a different timeline.
And I think there was a question about if I've not submitted type 2 forms for earlier years, what do I do? So the earlier years going back to 15, 16 can all be submitted on PCSE online, and that's quick and easy to do. If you can't do that, then you can use the same process that we've talked about this evening, but you'd need to go to the NHS Pensions website and download the form for the appropriate year and then follow the steps to complete it and submit it.
We wanted to just run through some important points to consider that we have talked about throughout the presentation. So just a couple of things. So one being just to make sure that you record the correct practice and the organisation on the personal details tab when you are completing the form. And it's really good practice as well to provide the ODS code, which can be found within the employee contribution statement in PCSE Online, which we have already previously shown you. If you're not sure and you don't remember where it was on the video, we will be uploading these videos onto YouTube should you need some more advice and just to refresh your memory on where you need to find those certain details in PCSE Online. Now, something else to remember as well, your employment details do need to be up to date for your perform list record in PCSE Online. Now, essentially, that means that you need to be aligned to the correct practice. Now, to be able to view that, you'll need to log into your PCSE Online account and check your details under the Performer List tab. And I think it's a button called Change History. If you select into that area, that will tell you if you've got any pending transactions going ahead with the practice or any completed employment changes, things like that. Now, if you do need any more information around managing your Performer List entry in PCSE Online, we do have lots of information available on the PCSE website. We've got user guides and we've got some helpful videos on the YouTube channel. Now, if you do find that you do have an employment change request that is pending practice approval, it's a good idea just to link in with them and ask the PL practice manager to log into their own PCSE Online account at the practice and approve any changes that are outstanding on your behalf. Just to let you know as well, the Type 2 form needs to be submitted to PCSE no later than the 28th of February this year. And also just a reminder that for the 2023-24 pension year, you can only submit your Type 2 form by using the downloaded Excel sheet, which is available on the NHS Pensions website. And you can only send that to PCSE by using the online inquiry form, which I've just shown you a video of. You may also have heard it as being called the Contact Us form. Now, with that in mind, all other financial years can be submitted by using PCSE Online. It's just the 23-24 pension year that you'll need to download the Excel sheet and send to us manually by using the online inquiry form. And if you do need any more information and guidance about completing the end of year form, or if you need some more information around annualisation and calculating the correct tier rate, there is lots of information within the Members Hub available on the NHS Pensions website.